Really, what I write is fantasy, contemporary fantasy, in the vein of, I don't know, John Collier or Roald Dahl. I take contemporary events and kind of look at them through the lens of fantasy and see what they really mean in mythic terms, which sounds terribly pompous, but it isn't. I just really tell stories.
Right, well then I've read your stories and I got very disturbed by them. And I like them very much. They have got a lot of violence in them.
There is a lot of violence in the world.
Now, you do describe things, though, sometimes in such a way that almost makes me squeamish.
Well, I'll tell you, I come from a tradition in America of the macho Western movie, you know, where John Wayne goes into a bar with 35 other people and they pound each other senseless for 2 hours, and at the end, all he's got, you know, is a little mouse under his eye. And that isn't what violence is all about. Violence is painful. It's full of blood. It hurts people. It kills people. And I think when you lie about it, when you pretty it up, you lead people to believe that it's possible to go around shooting each other and punching each other and stabbing each other with impunity. And my stories are intended to have a very pronounced emotional effect on people. And so, on occasion in a story, when it demands that, yes, I get very candid, very realistic. I did a I did a story about Jack the Ripper. I've been fascinated by the Ripper for, you know, for a long time. The way that he's become a myth, a legend. And when I wrote the story, I described in detail from the records one of his eviscerations of a woman. And it was roundly pilloried in America. I mean, people wrote me and said, you know, I must be a Mau Mau or some sort of terrible person to write this kind of thing. But it was the reality. And I wanted to explain the story was about the nature of evil. And I was trying to show that that's always comparative, and that something that seems incredibly evil in one period of time can be merely ludicrous in another.
But I would have defined them a little bit like that, because for one thing you set them in often a ruined world, a crumbled world. You often set them in a sort of way in our civilization, but you seem to be warning us that civilization is horrid, or it's beginning to be horrid, or that there are signs in us of some decay.
No, that's what I believe. I've spent a good deal of time in cities, in a number of countries, and they're all the same. Cities are basically dehumanizing. Cities are basically bestial. They turn people into animals. There's very little joy, very little light, and very little love. And I guess what some of my stories are saying is if you persist in cramming people like rats into a maze, they will inevitably go mad and chew each other to pieces. And in that way, I suppose they are cautionary tales.
Because you are an American, I did read your stories more as a criticism of America. I mean, maybe you are criticizing the world.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, now here's the bicentennial year, and in America there is a feast of love about how wonderful America is, and no one bothers to mention the terrible and awful things that have been done in the name of patriotism and in the name of founding a country. I dare say the same things, you know, apply to the English. But I think after a while, people get to praise themselves too much, and they lose sight of the fact that they have the same core of nastiness that everyone has.
Have you experienced violence yourself? I mean, directly. I mean, for instance, I read in your publicity that you have had several attempts or 2 attempts on your life.
Well, there were 2 bomb attempts on my life. That came directly from a kind of political column that I was writing in America during the 60s. I had to fight my way from school every day, and it was a very early education in the nature of bigotry and in the nature of hatred that has no rational background to it. And I fought ever since I was a child. And it was so bad that I had no friends. I had none whatsoever. I mean, you hear kids say, well, I had a miserable childhood and I didn't have any friends. But they always had one or two. I didn't have anybody. I was all alone, and it made me, I suppose, a cynical kid and a mean kid, and I got in a lot of trouble. And I always fought back, and eventually I just ran away when I was 13. No matter what else it was I was doing to earn a living, I was always writing.
Can you, in less than a minute, tell me about the story which I'm told is one of the best science fiction stories ever written, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream?
I will try. The background of the story is that the Third World War starts, and the 3 major powers, China, Russia, and America, find that the war is so complex that they cannot handle it just with people trying to program it, and so they build giant computers to handle all of the tactics. and fearing that they'll be bombed, they sink them into the earth far down in caves. Eventually, the computers link up and they take over the world, program the war so that all human beings are killed. And the story is about the last 5 human beings that are brought down into the center of the earth, inside the belly of this giant computer that fills the earth, and it torments them endlessly.